Welcome everyone. So my name is Sam. I'll start introductions now, and as people filter in, they'll filter in. But my name is Samuel. I'm the Director of Partnerships here at myQuest, and I'm really excited for the webinar today, Designing Engaging Leadership Programs for Next Generation Leaders. And I'd like to introduce the kind of, let's say, the star of the webinar, Rachel. She is I would say, top tier instructional designer, the bee's knees of instructional designing. So really excited to actually have this discussion and go through her process and understand really what shapes next generation leaders and what's going to work and what won't. And based on her research, there's some exciting stuff to go through. So I'll let you take it from here, Rachel.
Thanks so much, Samuel. I'm so excited to be here, everybody. So excited to share a lot of this exciting research with you. As Samuel said, I'm Rachel Shell. I'm the owner of RES Personalized Solutions, and we do mainly leadership development for multiple organizations around the world. You've heard of a few of them, I'm sure, if I were to name them. But yeah, we do a lot of leadership development. And I like to say that my specialty is looking at that emerging leader, that next generation leader, the ones who, are preparing for the future, and they may not even realize it yet. So that's who I really try to support. I am so excited that Samuel and Billy asked me to, come on and have this conversation around leadership programs for our next generation leaders. I'm so passionate about this. And if you think about it, our next generation leaders, it's not like we're preparing them to lead our companies. We're also preparing them to lead the world. These are the people who are going to be leading the country, leading major organizations. That's who we are working with right now. The last 3 years alone have had such a major impact on our businesses, from the pandemic, the rise of AI, and just globalization in general. We are just seeing so many changes in the way that we work. So the big question that I have right now is, how do we develop our leaders for this new world? Development must include, it's got to build a bridge, if you think about it. It has to build a bridge between where we currently are and the way that we lead now, and bridge to where we're going and how our leaders are going to be leading in 10, 20, 30 years from now. So I think that our overall theme today, what you're going to find, is that it really comes down to two very key areas that our new leaders have to be prepared in. They have to be lifelong learners, and they have to be adaptable, because they're going to be, to lead in this new world, they're going to have to be able to adapt quickly, be prepared to lead diverse teams, and deliver results in this ever-changing landscape.
Yeah, and actually, I'd like to maybe you mentioned a little bit about why it's important more now than in the past. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that, because it's the world is shifting drastically, right? The information technology and the situations that are happening all over the globe. What's your view on why is leadership more important now than it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago?
Yeah, that's a great question, Samuel. So I think that now what we're looking at, well, let me give you an example, okay? I don't know if this is the case for many of you, for those of you who are leaders here, but I know that this is what happened to me when I moved into leadership. I was really good at what I did. I was a really good instructional designer. And someone said, "Hey, you should lead this team." And I think that happens for a lot of us, right? We are practitioners. We become very good, very efficient. People like us. And someone goes, we should make you a leader. But just because we get the title, that doesn't mean that we're prepared to actually lead others.
Mm.
So that's one of the biggest differences we're seeing now is what can we do now? That's what a lot of the conversations that I'm having with global organizations is, how do we prepare these next generation leaders? And it really comes down to looking at the soft skills that we can help them learn at any point in their journey. And so, if you think about it, hard skills are out, soft skills are in. And I know that that's kind of a harsh statement, but the reasoning for it is if you think about it, we have to have leaders now that are able to communicate. So they have to be able to understand data, meet with direct reports, present findings to leadership, and they have to just have that communication at every level. They have to be able to manage their time, manage their team. This includes being able to delegate, manage their calendar and timelines. And then our new leaders have to be strategic thinking, problem solving, resilience. So that those critical thinking skills are more important than ever. And then I think one of the newer skills we're seeing come to light is that leaders have to have emotional intelligence and business empathy. So they have to have that whole new level of understanding of their role and their team's role in the overall company. So where this research is coming from is a huge research project that we just launched this year. And we are at RAS Personalized Solutions are trying to answer the question, what do leadership skills look like in 2024? So I'm going to drop in the chat a link to this survey. It's still open, and I would love to invite you to contribute your voice to it. You don't have to fill this out now. It's just a quick little 3 to 5 minute survey. You can fill it out later, but would love to have you contribute and see what your thoughts are around, these skills and if you agree. So I guess while we are here, I always like to ask, do you agree with the results of the survey that I just shared about communication, time management, critical thinking, and emotion or intelligence being, some of those key skills that we need our learners to focus on? So take a moment, reflect, does that apply to your company? Do you think that's what your future leaders need? And feel free to post in the chat any additional skills and abilities that you think your future leaders will need in the years to come. So, Samuel, I think that, when
Yeah.
I look back at my experience, I know that communication was kind of a skill that really rose to the top for me as, something that I needed to learn very quickly in order to move ahead. What about you? Did you have any skills that kind of,
Yeah. There's a laundry list of them in terms of what I had to develop and what I had to just kind of learn as I went. I remember there was a very vivid experience when I was training on how to facilitate group conversations, right? This is in a context of personal growth. And I'd been doing them myself as a participant for many years and been in the receiving end and part of these conversations. And I started to step into a leadership role because I was very good at understanding these things and asking the right questions. And so they put me on the hot seat, let's say. So they handed me the piece of paper and I knew what I needed to go through. I had the whole presenter notes and I knew what questions to ask and what to keep people focused on. Right. I had all the information. I even reviewed it before I did the session, but it didn't matter. I could have reviewed 200 hours of information and really prepped as much as I possibly could in terms of the knowledge, but nothing was going to prepare me for what happened when I stood up in front of the group and started to get live coaching from the facilitator. And it was a real learning curve for me to understand communication and how critical it is when getting results out of a conversation. I'll never forget the facilitator at the time. I started just saying stuff randomly. I was nervous and it was quirky. I was kind of a strange guy. I still am, a lot weirder than I am now. But I just kept saying random stuff. And he just stopped me. He goes, okay, stop, Samuel, stop. You just keep saying stuff. You keep putting stuff in the space, like just random stuff. It's like putting, where people are having a conversation and there's something developing. You're not leaving any space, and what you put into the space matters. And that was like the first opening for me to understand that, wow, the words that I use as a leader and my ability to communicate effectively, it's kind of at the basis of everything I'm going to be doing. And it's still a journey. A lot has shifted, but I'll never forget that moment and how powerful of a learning experience it was for me, and understanding the critical skill that communication is. Not only being able to communicate clearly your ideas, but taking out the extra. And
Hmm.
that's always been the access to communication effectiveness, is cut the extra.
Yeah.
Um, and when you can really always get to the core of things, it seems to work.
It's such a great story. And I would agree. I think communication is always that skill I fall back on whenever I look at the results of the survey as they're coming in these days. It's not just a feeling. I think most people agree that communication is like that key critical skill that learners at leaders at every level have to learn. I know that even though I've been leading for quite a while, I am always reminded like I'm at another level of communication. To your point, like how do I make what I'm saying so simple that my team can walk away and immediately go, okay, what was the takeaway? What do I need to do next, right? Like
What needs
how
to
do I
happen?
not put all the stuff in the words? And that's hard for me. I want to say all the things.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, it doesn't matter how much you might learn about communication or anything that you're trying to develop. It's about the applied practice and
Hmm.
that ability to, as you mentioned earlier, the importance of being able to adapt, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So good. So I that reminds me of something that I want to share. So related to these skills that we're talking about, there's a report that's come out recently. I don't know how many of you have seen this. If you want to comment in the chat, if you have, that would be great. But this was reported by Insight, but the actual report is from the Standard and Poor's 500 Index. And in 2020, someone looked at, the Standard and Poor 500 index, which is published every year, and they started looking at the life of companies, and they found that in starting in 2020, that 21 years is the average lifespan of companies now. But if you go back and look in 1965, that average company lifespan was 32 years. So we're seeing a reduction, like it's dropped by 12 years. Um, I'm sorry, 11 years. Companies are not staying around as long. So the reason I bring that up is because I think that that is one of the key things that we have to look at when we're trying to think about succession planning. What is the future of our company? What is going to happen for us next? What is the life I mean, one exercise that I do with companies right now is we go through and we look at what is the lifespan of your company based on where you are now. And one of the things that always comes out of that is, what do we have to do to, make our company stick around for longer? What are some of the things we have to do?
Yeah.
Ultimately, it comes back to hard skills versus soft skills.
Yeah, and it's very counterintuitive. The name soft skills, it's really funny because the hard skills, you actually are the easiest to learn. You can just sit down and with time you develop them. You want to learn how to do Excel, you can do that over the weekend and you can get better immediately at that. But as I mentioned before with this story I shared, it doesn't matter how much I learn about communication. It's the hardest part to learn soft skills. Soft skills are the hardest thing to develop because it
Yeah.
takes the continuous practice and application and the a structure of support around ensuring that that skill is moving forward, right? It's like
Yeah.
you want to move the flag forward every time you step into a discussion if you're working on that skill, and not have it, thrown back 10 yards because, hey, there's a situation that came up and I messed up, and okay, now I faltered it. It's a difficult process. They should call them should be like I don't know. There should be a different word for it though. Soft skills. They're
Not
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 soft.
so soft skills.
Yeah, it's like getting dragged over rocks learning them sometimes.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think that this is kind of a new idea for us in, leading companies and everything that, oh, maybe there's not such an emphasis on hard skills. Like hard skills do matter, but you look at AI, and I mean, I may not be the best PowerPoint designer, but I can just put my stuff into AI and it's going to spit out slides for me now, beautiful slides. I may not be the best at budgeting or running statistical data. I can go on Upwork now and use Upwork to find a consultant that can do that. So those hard skills are becoming easier and easier to find people to help us with that. So, the question is, then what is it that we need our leaders to do?
Yeah.
So we're going to get into that. We're going to look at those skills, those foundational skills. But I want to say that the key capabilities of our new leaders comes down to they have to be lifelong learners and they have to be adaptable. And if you think about it, just look at where we are in this current time. We have to learn about this new technology, this new way of working, and then we have to be adaptable and figure out how does our company fit into this with this new technology? How do we work with it? How do we work with this new way of doing things? So what are these key skills that we need to focus on? I know that's what everybody's like, all right, you keep talking about them. What are they? So here they are. These are the 8 foundational skills. Now, this comes from the research that we've been doing over the past few years. And we find that the foundational leadership skills are communication, decision making, or being able to make decisions, emotional intelligence, problem solving, adaptability, collaboration and teamwork, strategic thinking, and resilience. Now, what's really fascinating about this is that one of the things that we've studied is, one of the questions we had in the very beginning is, okay, do we believe that these foundational skills have to be learned before somebody can take that first leadership role? And the answer is no. That is what's really kind of amazing about this. But what our research is finding is that you only can get to a certain point in your leadership journey if you have not mastered, not, I wouldn't say master, but have not at least dove into these skills. So this is kind of a different approach. This is different from what we think of traditional leadership development, because traditionally we're like, go learn how to communicate, learn how to make decisions, learn this, learn this, learn this. Now go, you're a leader. But we're finding that it doesn't really work that way. It is an ongoing journey. And I think most of us in leadership here would agree that it is. It's a never ending journey. It's like we're always, learning a skill, applying it, and then, figuring out, okay, what do I do next? Where do I go with this next? So
Yeah.
I don't know, Samuel, if you had any experience like that in your journey. I know that, like I mentioned with communication, just when I thought that I had communication down because I took a course on how to be a good presenter, I realized that now I have to learn how to communicate with my team. And that's a whole different set of
Yeah.
communication skills.
Well, I'll steal kind of a, a a yoga quote from BKS Iyengar is kind of the history I have with some of the training I went through. But it stands true in this field as well, in soft skill development. The moment you feel you've arrived, you get squashed like a bug. So the instant a leader takes that position of I've arrived and I've developed myself and I'm a leader, I'm the best at communication, or the second you feel that you know something or good at it, those are the moments when things happen, when then there's the knowledge gap that's you're blind to in a way. So that's something that speaks to that adaptability. Unless we're, unless I'm constantly in that process of looking at um, where can I shape and develop more? What don't I know? That's I think the most important question for adaptability. And I think that that quote from Iyengar always really rings true and sticks with me for any kind of development process because um, anytime there's a moment when a leader sets in that feeling of, oh, I've got this, is when it usually slips right through their fingers. There's a new thing they learn about it, or there's a new set of knowledge that they find out they don't have on the subject. And usually it's found out through a way of a mistake or an issue or a challenge.
So, I mean, I could not have said it any better. That was beautifully said, and it's so true. And it's what we have found after 16 years in the learning and development field, that it is that cyclical approach. It has to be learned, practiced, and then revisited. And it's that constant cycle. And it's funny you say that because that is actually what inspired the way that we approach uh, leadership development in the company. And so I have this framework that I share, this graphic, because this is how leadership development has to work. It starts with that practical learning, which sets up our lifelong learners, right? So they learn about a skill, and learning can be, I mean, it can be so many different things. It can be an educational program, a seminar, a book, a workshop, a course. We learn from others. Like, learning just happens. So however they learn, they take that learning, and then what we want to help them do is we want to help them to leverage their connections so that they can internalize the information they learned. So when we talk about leveraging connections, what we're talking about here is peer learning, mentorship, coaching, anything like that that's going to help learners talk about what it is they just learned. How do these leaders take this idea of communication or decision making, and then how do they apply it to their own situation? And what we really love to hear in these leveraged connections conversations are things like, well, this one time in the past, I did this, and now I'm wondering if I would do it this way. Like, anytime that they can go back and relate it to past experiences, it means that they're internalizing and really understanding how they can start using that learning in their own life. And then finally, we have practice leadership, and that's where they are going to practice everything that they learned, and we do that with hands-on experience, real world projects, and practical learning. And it's just like what you shared in your example. It's a continuous cycle. So they might practice leadership and then they're going to learn something else. Or I will say, this is what usually happens. We might be working on communication, and then they'll realize, oh, I might want to work on empathy. I think that the way I communicate needs to be a little bit more empathetic. Well, that falls into emotional intelligence. So then they learn more about empathy. And so the whole cycle starts over again. But that's natural. That is just how humans learn. And that's how leaders learn. And that's why when I introduced the skills, I said, these skills can be learned throughout their leadership journey. It doesn't mean that you have to learn these to go into leadership. And the reason for that is because it's cyclical and you're building on these skills as you go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a washing machine of constantly, the things that throw you through the loop or have you question. It's the perfect opportunity to discover.
Yep.
For sure. I like it.
Yep. So, I guess that leads us to, like, okay, you've told me what skills I need to learn. You've told me how my leaders need to learn it. So how do we build a leadership development program using this information, right? So I'm going to leave you with some tips. that you can implement. Now, just like the washing machine of learning graphic that we just looked at, I will say these tips, you apply them and then you start where you are and you grow from there. So as you're reading these, I do want to say, don't feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have a way to do personalized learning. I don't have all of these tools. And that's okay. Do what you can where you are and use the tools available to you. Starting with mentorship and coaching, that is probably one of the most powerful tools that you can use. And I think that myQuest does an amazing job with that mentorship coaching piece and aligning it to what they're learning.
Yeah. No, Rachel and I, when we first had an introduction call, there was an immediate synergy around how our like learning structure works in a quest model. So at myQuest, we've created a quest, which is our approach to training delivery, and it let's say reaffirms the research that Rachel's doing, and it lines perfectly up with this idea that you can't just have the information delivery. There needs to be those leverage connections, and in our world, that's the the mentorship and the coaching, and that through knowledge being applied, you need to have that process of communication happening and feedback and discussion so that learners aren't left alone. So, if we look at the way like a quest, and I'd love if anyone's interested in learning more about a quest or myQuest and how it can support delivery of leadership training programs, I'm more than happy to have a demo call. You book a call with me. We can just have a discussion. We can throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. But the main focus of a quest is to give the user actions to take related to the knowledge. So they're given, okay, here's how to do this one thing. Focus on doing this today. So it doesn't just become information on the screen that they pass a quiz and move on from. It becomes very real that they can bring to life in the world of their work. So, okay, here's a conflict resolution I'm supposed to focus on with the team discussion we have now, and I know there's conflict in the team. And then they come back to the platform and share how it goes with a coach. They're bringing other people into the world of that learning. And then from there, they're potentially asked to read, okay, try this meeting structure again 2 weeks later and reflect on how it went. So the process of bringing experiential learning, mentorship, and coaching, tracking and alignment on what's happening and how it's being applied, and also, personalizing what people do. All these pieces is something that myQuest can support and does support. It's part of the, let's say, core infrastructure of the technology and how learning and training delivery is supported with the platform. So again, if you more than happy to speak with anyone who has questions or wants to learn more about it.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I was, to Samuel's point, when we first started talking about myQuest and looking at it, what I was really intrigued about and what I have dove more into is, as someone who is leading this leadership development, I have coaches with me, I have community support people, I have all of these support people because, I'm not tracking every individual student. And so it was like, all right, well, how do I get so think about it. In the past, manually, it would be like, okay, this student completed communication module. So now we need them to go and meet with their coach about it. So I would literally have to download all their reflections and everything that they made and then send it to the coach. But in myQuest, that is all integrated. And so that coach really does take it to that next level to give that personalized experience. So personalized learning can be pulling courses and resources that are targeted to where the student is, but it can also be having personalized coaching and mentoring sessions around, the information they're sharing. And I think myQuest does a wonderful job with that and makes it flow so much better for our learners and our leaders as they're working through that. So just to kind of real quickly go through them because I didn't go through them all. If you are thinking of creating your own leadership development training, then what you want to do is first look at how can you build in mentorship and coaching? So if you can bring in a coach, bring in a coach. But if you don't have that available to you, look at some of your senior leaders and see who would be willing to mentor your new leaders and, answer their questions and help them work on these foundational skills. And then look at experiential learning projects that you can build in. So I keep going back to communication, so I'll use a different one. Resilience. If resilience is one of the skills that you want to work on with your new leader, then what are some resilient projects? Maybe put them in like a think tank around a problem that the company is trying to solve and let them work on that and see what it's like to, actually experience that leadership skill within the context of the company. Personalized learning paths, I mentioned you can pull personalized learning, but mentoring and coaching is a way of personalizing learning because you're having those leaders talk about real experiences applied to their real jobs and how they're using that. And then finally, you have to track and align. So for our leaders to grow, we have to have a baseline. So we have to know where they're starting, and then we have to see that growth. And so that tracking and alignment is really important here. Again, myQuest is a great tool that allows us to see where our leaders are starting, how they're growing, and where they're going to go to next. So I throw these four out because I think this is where I always start when I come into a company and they're like, okay, we're going to build a leadership program. So I'm like, okay, these are the four things we're going to look at. But I want to ask you, what are some other strategies that you can think of that need to be included in your leadership development program? So I would love to have you share in the chat any other strategies that you think would be helpful as you are creating leadership development. Also, if there's any questions that you have, we would love to answer some questions for you. This was a really big overview. So if you want to ask anything very specific to some of the things you're thinking about around leadership development, I would love to definitely answer those. You can put them in the chat, or I'm sure Billy would be okay if you want to come off mute.
Yeah, for sure. Feel free
Yeah.
to come off mute if you have any questions.
Yeah.
And I see, so also in the chat, some people are posting their answers. So Isabel said peer coaching is another strategy. Tony said leading with empathy and inclusion. Ed,
Networking.
yeah.
Yeah.
Read through the comments, and then if Samuel or Rachel, if you have any insights on the stuff posted.
I want to say Dawn said community-based project for the team. And Dawn, I absolutely agree. I went through a workshop years ago around community-based learning. And the one that I did, because I live in the South, so the one that I went through was called the poverty simulation. And we went through this simulation, and then we actually went out into the community to look at how to provide resources and training solutions for families that fell below a certain income level. Oh my gosh, eye-opening. I still remember the team that I went through with. It was there are lessons from that I will take with me until I die. So I agree with you. Community-based projects are amazing. And yeah, I can brainstorm with anybody all day on what those could look like. I see Corinne said that I think learning advocates are critical and love to combine online learning with face-to-face training. We used to call this blended. Now we often call it hybrid. Corinne, yes, I actually, that's what I also teach and preach is blended learning. I'm old school too, Corinne. I call it blended learning too. So, but yes, I agree with you. It's funny because I remember before 2020, like that's kind of our new milestone, right? So before, I remember everything I worked on with companies training wise was like in person. And then in 2020, everything went to online. And then I will say in the past year, more and more people are really becoming interested in the blended part of it. And I love it because it's like it's a good balance of getting resources, but not having to have all these resources to support training. But it really does. It helps people to learn at their own pace, learn at their own time, and then when on in the online piece, and then when they come into the in-person part of it, they really just spend that time connecting. That mentoring and peer coaching really do go to another level. So anyway, again, I could talk about that all day long.
Yeah, it's a hybrid blended. It's the self-paced process is like you're
Mhm.
really involving in your own kind of learning and development of that topic, or you're practicing something specific. It's like you're tuning the instrument, you're kind of
Yes.
like setting the strings and understanding how it works and what notes you can play on your own. And then when you come together with the group and you have those facilitated discussions where a skilled facilitator can close the knowledge gaps, create confidence where it needs to be created, and like really move the needle with what they've done on their own. It's like everyone comes together and plays their instrument together, and it creates, wow, this like huge shift in someone's ability to grasp a skill like communication or time management or feedback. So yeah, and this is another example of that. But I think the blended learning, and I'll say this, like oftentimes the challenge with blended learning and the disconnect is that the self-paced is so separate from the in-person, and there's not the ability to have it be one cohesive process start to finish. And that's where the best hybrid blended programs create that experience where it feels like one long experience, and there's not these like stop start, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm on my own and my blinders on, and then we come together as a group. We're still communicating as a group in the self-pace. We're having discussions about what's coming up. We're sharing insights. And then when we get together, it's like that much more effective and impactful. So that I think is a really important hybrid, and blended learning is crucial to making sure that there's some kind of real outcome.
Absolutely agree. Kind of along those same lines, I want to talk to what Jonathan Reams just posted. What fits really well in that blended strategy is that micro skill and emotion work. I do not want to speak for Mr. Reams, so if he wants to come off mute and talk about it a little bit more, feel free.
It's Dr. Reams, I believe.
Dr. Reams, I'm sorry. Sorry, Dr. Reams, but I would love to know more about the work you're doing, because I do think that fits so well into what we're talking about with this blended model and this leadership development model. That's more of that personalized approach.
I suppose I could say some things. I put in the chat the temporary landing page we have. No, I've been using myQuest to run a leadership program at the university for the last few years. And these things that you were just describing about keeping them in process throughout the whole semester rather than just the punctuated meetings has been so important. And the thing that you said earlier, Samuel, about the way that the AFT model allows them to focus on action. And for me, the action has been mostly about inviting them to connect whatever book chapter or article or section that the theme is and connect it to their own experience and do something with it in that context. And then share those things both in the community forum, but then when they come to the class, they have this rich body of common experience and work and hearing from each other to take the conversation much further and deeper. And so I think it's worked super well in those ways, and all the students were very happy with that.
Yeah. No, and thanks for sharing that, Jonathan. And by the way, in the chat, Jonathan mentioned AFT, which is action, feedback, trigger. That's kind of the engine of learning that myQuest is structured around. And that's again the synergy with Rachel's leadership development process. It's spot on. And it's always nice to get an affirmation in the outside objective world, not just, your own mental musings about, okay, I think this works, and then we're seeing it work. And then connecting with Rachel and seeing that, wow, okay, here's someone who has a lot of experience doing this, and a lot of experience in the, let's say, in the work of developing real leaders in company environments, and seeing that model fits with what we do. It's good to see. And Jonathan, you described it well, the action, feedback, trigger. It's similar to what Rachel's speaking to, but I think it's more of, let's say, the like distilled down raw process, whereas Rachel's is, I think, developed around leadership development process specifically. There's a little bit more that nuance that yours brings to it, Rachel, that I think is very important in the environment that it's applied in.
Yeah, I will say though that Dr. Reams, he is spot on with, especially when it comes to emotional work. So I think that I don't have research to back up what I'm about to say, but I think that it's just kind of one of those things where, to me, it's no surprise that we start moving leaders into having to develop their emotional awareness, intelligence, empathy, and those emotional things, those human things, that we're moving to that. And then all of a sudden we're saying, this fire hose approach of just spraying everybody with all the knowledge they need all at once, like that's not working anymore. And so to Dr. Ream's point, I think when we get into this deep human work, we have to take a different approach. We have to give them the information, let them internalize it, and then every person is going to go as far as what they can go with that, because we're all different. Like, I might go much further with empathy than Samuel does, but Samuel might be able to take emotional intelligence to a whole new level, So I love that. Yes, as Corinne said, thrusting information down everyone's throats doesn't work. And I think as we go more and more into creating an adaptable leadership, or creating adaptable leaders, then we have to look at how we're going to develop those leaders. We have to take a different approach. We can't just throw everything at them all at once.
Yeah. And
great discussion though.
And it's not, and I think your spot, like the things you brought up at the beginning is like, okay, so if we're going to develop an effective leadership program and we want to make it work, it's not necessarily always about the specific skill that is being trained in that moment. Like you mentioned, it's okay, these things are all what are going to be critical, but what comes at the core of all of that is their adaptability and that constant learning. Spray and pray. Yeah. So it's just that, like, developing the effective process is it just needs to make sure that that's at the base of it, is that you're encouraging someone to consistently learn and getting them passionate, excited about how they can develop, and making sure they can stay on their feet.
So I would just say first, I don't really like we're using the doctor thing, so please knock that off.
I'm sorry, Jonathan. I don't know if you guys know Jonathan, but Jonathan and I, we've been in connection for a little while, and he's up to some really cool stuff. I was just trying to poke fun.
I know. But I would just say I put a link in there to that page, and what is there is links to this Building Emotional Resilience program that we're piloting, doing some research on. And it's really trying to make use of the myQuest structure to adapt the learning model that we found fits best with this. And really take this micro approach of not prescribing content, but helping people use their everyday experience to build the skills that are relevant for them through a process.
I love
it.
it.
There's links to go into demonstration versions of all this in myQuest in there.
That is wonderful. I am definitely going to follow along. I am so excited about this research and this pilot, and I I will be following.
Yeah.
So just to name drop, we've actually got the Vatican using it.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So there's some really interesting and cool and unknown groups using myQuest, and they don't know it's myQuest because it's white labeled for the company that's delivering it to them. Jonathan named the Vatican. When I found that out, I was very excited, and I thought that was a really amazing kind of discovery to hear. Like, wow, that's really cool. But it when you make the leadership program and development process fit the human being, it's going to work. And what
Yep.
we have, like what we're seeing in the industry, I think is a shift back to like we're moving away. Well, because knowledge and access to knowledge, it's no longer, rote memorization and bringing stuff up from knowledge and going to the library. It's the ability to be dynamic with what you know and apply it in the right situation. And I forgot the point I was going to make. It's gone.
Well, I want to pick up the thread that you started there, and I want to say
Please
that
do.
this is why what you're saying and where I'm going is my case for why mentoring and coaching is such an important aspect of leadership development, because people, like, we keep coming back to this theme of, I call it personalized learning, but it's people learning at their own pace, people going as far as they're able to go with something. And so I think that, the point that I was taking from that is that, that mentor coaching piece is the important piece. It's like, you can take this, you can learn it, you can use this amazing tool, but like, you have to take that next step and you have to discuss and you have to apply it. And we do that by talking to other humans. So that mentor coaching element is so important. And that is one of the things with myQuest that I've seen that I'm not seeing other tools do as well, in what I've seen. And so that is what I'm excited about, is being able to meet everybody at where they are in their journey. That is what's key to helping people take that next level. Because if you think about it, that kind of old school approach to learning is like, we're going to cover this, and then if you got it, you got it. If you didn't, we're moving on. And, we're not doing that. We can't do that anymore. We can't do that with our leaders. Like, it's not a pass fail test for
Yeah.
leadership.
It needs that. So the point I was trying to make came back to me. Thank you. Is about, making sure the training and development process that's created for leaders fits the human being and fits the way the human brain works and how we understand and digest information now. And that is very different than it was 5 years ago, 20 years ago. But yeah, it's critical that personalization comes through the humanization of the content and learning process. And I think the model that you've given, Rachel, highlights that, where it's about like, because again, it's not the knowledge, it's the process of learning it, leveraging the connections you have with the knowledge, and then the practical application, and then going back to the learning again. And that's very human. That's how we learn to do all skills in life.
Yeah.
Walking, talking, eating, these things, they're little bits of things over time that build a strong bridge of, let's say, association and knowledge. And then that gets reinforced, but it has to be human for it to work. That's
100%.
the core point I was trying to make. Flew out of my head earlier.
It's a great point. Billy, thank you so much for posting in there those final links. I am going to add the survey one more time, because all of this information that I'm sharing comes from the research. So I would love to invite everybody also to contribute your voice to our research and let us know what you think about the foundational skills and what leaders need in 2024. So threw that out there, Billy. Well, Samuel, this has been an amazing conversation. I really hope that everybody's been nerding out with us on learning and leadership. I could talk about this all day long, if you can't tell. But I, know that we don't have all day, unfortunately.
Yeah. And you know, the more I talk to people like yourself and other individuals that I've connected with in the space of leadership, and the more conversations like this I have, I'm more reaffirmed in how little I know on the subject. And that's a great feeling, because it means there's this like vast space to explore. So yeah, I appreciate the input and the insight that you brought today on leadership and creating a leadership development program that's going to fit the human beings that are in your workplace and take into consideration what models work with that human being in that space, and what is going to be what might get you stuck.
Yeah. Well, um, Samuel, I don't know if there's anything else that we want to cover, but I will definitely stick around for a few minutes. I know sometimes some people may have some questions and they don't want to ask in front of everyone else. So if there is anybody who wants to ask any one-on-one questions, I was going to say I will stick around a little bit so that you can ask those without everybody else watching.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions. And no, it's good to see like some familiar faces and names in the chat. So if you know, give me a shout out, shoot me an email, even if it's just like, hi, what's up? I'd love to reconnect to anyone that I've connected with in the past, and it's been a while. Feel free to shoot me a message.